Hey, what's going on, everybody? So today we're going to be talking about the It series, chapters 1 and 2. I will be spoiling stuff in this video. I'm going to talk about everything. So if you want to know what happens in these movies, you have not yet seen them, I wouldn't recommend watching this. But either way, let's get into it. So It was originally a book written by Stephen King back in 1986, and it was then brought to TV as a miniseries in 1990. This starred Tim Curry, who played Pennywise slash It. I'll get into that a little later. And in 2017, director Andy Muschietti, I'm sorry if I pronounced that name wrong, and New Line Cinema brought this back to life and modernized it. So the story of It follows a group of 7 friends who are self-proclaimed Losers Club, and the kids are targeted by what they believe to be a deadly clown named Pennywise. As situations escalate, the group realizes that It feeds on their fears and is not as humanoid as they thought. The Losers Club must band together, support one another to combat the evil presence. This new take on the series brings light to a classic while keeping the nostalgia and fear that the original series had. As far as the cast goes, Bill Skarsgård plays Pennywise and is amazing. Jaden Martell plays Bill Denbrough, the leader of the Losers Club. Jeremy Ray Taylor plays Ben. Sophia Lillis plays Beverly. Finn Wolfhard plays Richie. Chosen Jacobs plays Mike. Jack Dylan Grazer plays Eddie. And Wyatt Olaf plays Stanley. In the first film, the movie begins with Bill's little brother Georgie losing his paper boat in a rainstorm and chasing after it. As he chases after it, it eventually goes down a sewer drain, and this is where we are first introduced to Pennywise. This kicks off the series and ends up becoming one of the most iconic scenes in not only horror but movie cinematic history in general. The first film is set back in the late 1980s and features the Losers Club as young children. It chronicles each one of their individual experiences with It. The passageway for It to these kids is their fear. One of the biggest misconceptions of not only these movies but just the story in general is that It is a clown, which is actually not the case. It, or what is named It, is a group of deadlights that can form and that can shapeshift and change. Pennywise, the clown, is one of the forms, one of shapes it can take on. This is the case with the novel, not the TV miniseries, however. That is more of just an actual clown, someone that's actually dressed up as a clown, not like an alien life form. So in chapter 1, the group is using their summer vacation to figure out the mystery behind the disappearances in Derry, Maine, which is where the story is set. Upon further research, they realize that every 27 years, something dark happens in the town. I find that the plot is handled very well in the first film, and I enjoy the way each person's fear or each person's personal encounter with It is handled differently, but at the same time tied back into the overall group. For example, Beverly is afraid of her father, who is physically abusive, and at some point when they are attempting to run away slash fight off It, he takes the form of her father. I feel as if the scares in this movie are effective, and the direction that Pennywise is taken in this modern iteration is perfect, 100%. Bill Skarsgård is amazing in this role. You couldn't have found someone better to play It or Pennywise. One of the things, this is also kind of related to his character, but just I'd say overall fear factors in this movie is the use of CGI and the overuse of CGI. I feel as if the way the town is, the way the story is told, I feel like there could be a couple of instances where practical effects would be better than just using something that's like super CGI'd and digital. It seems to be a double-edged sword, however, because if you are familiar with Stephen King, you know his stories start out crazy and they only get crazier as they go. And I think it is probably at the top of the list for just wild stuff. It's hard to use practical effects in certain moments, but at the same time, I feel as if you should maximize your opportunities to use practical effects. It would only help the rest of the atmosphere. So all the acting in this movie is outstanding. There are even strong performances by secondary characters. The pharmacy store clerk, Eddie's mom, the librarian, just like all these people, they have a very weird feel, and they all kind of look alike, which is strange. And it seems as if these people only belong in this like other world or dimension that it takes place in. And from top to bottom, the first chapter does a great job of starting the story off and showing how the Losers Club starts out as friends. You know, they kind of add a couple people here and there, like Ben and Beverly and Mike, and they just get closer and closer as the outside world is getting more cruel to them. It creates a bond between the viewer and the cast. You become sympathetic and invested emotionally into them, and you feel as if you are part of it. That is another reason why this is so successful. So the first movie ends with the resolve of the Losers Club killing it and banishing him back to the darkness. This worked as both a positive and a negative in my opinion, because while it was a good resolve, it was a good way to close out the first movie. I feel as if it might have shut the door too much, considering the fact that they knew there was going to be a second one. I feel like maybe a scene where it shows the Losers Club in the future, maybe 27 years later, and they come across a sign of it, hinting at like a second movie, might have been better. But regardless, the movie as a whole, first chapter was great. So as for the second chapter, the story remains strong while developing the characters at the same time. The movie opens with a fair in Derry, Maine, 27 years after the Losers Club thought they killed it for good. And the first scene introduces us to a couple who is being harassed because of their sexuality. One of the men is eventually thrown off of a bridge after a fight, and he lands in a stream of some kind, and as he's struggling to not drown, flowing downstream, he can barely through his eyes see a hand reaching out to try to save him, which is Pennywise. That's definitely the number one guy you would want to save you while you were drowning. He is then killed, and this sparks a new flame in the case of people going missing in Derry. Only this time it's 27 years later, and the Losers Club is all grown up. So the adult version of the Losers Club features Jessica Chastain as Beverly, Bill Hader as Richie, James McAvoy as Bill, Bill Skarsgård as It again, Jay Ryan as Ben, James Ransone as Eddie, Isaiah Mustafa as Mike, and Andy Bean as Stanley. So the sort of new leader of the Losers Club is Mike, and he is at least responsible for getting them all back together, if nothing else. And Mike is the only member who stayed in Derry all these years while everyone else moved around throughout the country. He lets all of them know that It is back and he needs their help. And it's been 27 years since they have last met. They must be reunited. Most of them are hesitant to go back due to what happened the last time they were all together. So to this point, the story holds up in my opinion, and the film shows each member of the Losers Club and what they're up to in present day in their lives individually, all the way up to the point where they get together for a reunion at a restaurant. As the film progresses, Mike informs the rest of the group that each one of them must find an artifact of the past to summon it and face their fears. I personally love how each person gets their own moment. This makes the group feel more unified, and it makes each individual feel as if there's importance for them, which only makes the entire group seem more believable and strong. The scares in this movie are a little more up and down than the first one. As I mentioned previously, the CGI could have been used a little less. The best example was in the scene where Beverly is to find her artifact. So she goes back to the house which she once lived when she was younger. She comes across an old woman that lives there now. It ends up being it, just in another form. So the monster itself seems overly doctored and really not that scary. This is a matter of opinion, of course, and that is the only aspect of the scares that I found to be problematic. Besides the overused effects, the rest of the scares were actually very well placed and well executed, to be honest. I really liked the individual encounters that Richie and Ben had when finding their artifacts. I feel like this made a good use of their secrets. Richie's being that he is gay, and Ben being that he's in love with Beverly. So the movie calls back to the first chapter towards the end with the Losers Club, all going down to the sewer system to kill it. The movie concludes with the group finally figuring out that their fear is the only reason it has control of them. This series is packed with a lot of story and development, and I feel that the plot over the 2 chapters was carried out very well and consistently. Each character was developed, further contributing to the world this takes place in. Speaking of that world, that is one of the biggest strengths for these 2 films. Derry, Maine feels like a different world, a different dimension, just something totally strange. Not just because of the alien life form that's terrorizing the city, but because of the offset, just like eerie kind of like nature that is around this town. It seems like it should be a small, nice suburban neighborhood, but actually has a dark undertone. The Losers Club gets stronger after encountering their greatest fears and losing their friend Stanley due to suicide. My biggest critique of these movies is the drawn-out quality. Not the first chapter as much, but in the second chapter, the final scene where they kill it, I feel is unnecessarily long, and it could even be almost like 40 minutes shorter. With that being said, however, these movies do a great job of bringing the viewer into a unfamiliar yet familiar world, and the scenes are mostly effective. In this modern interpretation, Pennywise is very unique and cool. The child and adult actors both do a great job of portraying their characters. The score, camera work, and set designs, all technicalities of the movie hold up and are well done. And these 2 movies are very fun to watch for any kind of fan, whether you are a die-hard horror fan or whether you're a beginner and you just want to get into the genre. Or you might not even like horror, you might not even be interested in it, and you just want to watch something. This can be enjoyed by anyone. I highly recommend them. And as far as the overall series, because I don't want to just individualize the 2 movies too much, rather talk about the whole series, I would give the series a 4 out of 5. There's very, very few things that I feel like is wrong with these movies, but they're not perfect. Very good though. So thank you guys again for watching. It means a lot. And before I end this video, this past summer I actually drew Pennywise, and that is what is over my shoulder back there. I'm gonna put a picture at the end of this video so you guys can see it better. So when I have more art for some of these movies I talk about, I'll try to feature that more on this channel too. Thank you guys again for watching. Have a good one.